I walked in on my straight coworker doing something very private with his tool in the supply closet, and he didn't even stop. He looked me straight in the eye, smirked, and asked, "You staying or going?" I froze. I should have walked away, but something in me stayed. I never imagined that moment would lead to one of the most unexpected and intimate nights of my life. What started as a surreal encounter turned into something I still can't fully process. Let me back up. My name's Jordan, and I work at a construction supply warehouse in the outskirts of town, the kind of place that smells like sawdust, grease, and bad coffee. I'd been there almost a year, just long enough to know who actually did the work and who just pretended to. Most of the crew was older, gruff, the been here since '92 kind of guys, but then there was Tyler. Tyler was newish, started a few months after me. Tall, messy blonde hair, lean frame but toned in that effortless, I lift things all day kind of way. Always wore these beat-up cargo pants and sleeveless shirts, even when it was freezing, like he was allergic to sleeves or something. And yeah, he was straight. Flirted with every woman who walked in, had a girlfriend who dropped off lunch sometimes, the whole package. But here's the thing, I'd caught him looking at me, not often, and not in the obvious lingering way, more like brief flickers. Once, while I was loading PVC pipes into a bin, I felt his eyes on me. Looked up, he looked away. Another time in the break room, he stood close enough that our arms touched, and he didn't move away for a solid 30 seconds. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was reading into it because, well, I found him hot. I kept it all in check. I'd learned the hard way in other jobs that it's better not to mix things, especially when someone's definitely straight. So I stuck to the usual jokes, small talk, occasionally swapping shifts, nothing even close to flirting, until that afternoon. I'd been sent to grab a replacement drill from the supply closet. It was a cramped little room tucked behind the loading dock, barely lit by a flickering fluorescent bulb and stacked floor to ceiling with bins and boxes. I knocked once, out of habit. No answer. Opened the door, and there he was. Leaning against the back wall, one hand down his pants, the other gripping a shelf. His head snapped up, but instead of panicking, he met my eyes. Smirked, didn't even stop moving his hand. "You staying or going?" he asked, breath slightly uneven. I couldn't speak. I stood there like an idiot, caught between turning and running or whatever the hell was happening. My brain screamed at me to leave, to apologize, to pretend it hadn't happened. But I didn't. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. What the hell was I doing? He chuckled. Low, soft. "Didn't peg you for a voyeur," he said. Still touching himself, still looking at me like this wasn't insane. "You're not gonna report me or some HR shit, are you?" "No," I finally said, voice hoarse. He raised an eyebrow. "Then maybe you should lock that door." My hand moved before I even thought about it. The lock clicked. And just like that, I was standing 5 feet away from Tyler, the so-called straight coworker I'd low-key crushed on for months. "What are you doing?" I asked. "What does it look like?" He shot back with a grin. "I should have left. I should have walked out and gone home and pretended I was sick. But I didn't. Something in me was too curious, too stunned, maybe too turned on. He didn't say anything for a moment, just watched me. "Wanna help?" I blinked. "Are you serious?" He stepped closer, the space between us shrinking to nothing. "Only if you want to." I was already gone. Standing there in the supply closet, heart thudding so loud it drowned out the hum of the overhead light, I knew this moment was one of those before and after moments, the kind that shifts something inside you, whether you're ready or not. Tyler was inches away now, his breath warm in the narrow space. I could smell the hint of sweat and cedar from the cheap cologne he always wore. His shirt was slightly damp around the collar, and the way his eyes stayed locked on mine, confident, curious, testing, made it clear this wasn't a joke. "You gonna stand there all day, or you gonna give me a hand?" he said, voice low and teasing, like this was something we did every day. I didn't move, didn't speak. My brain had fully shut down, but my body didn't need it anymore. I reached forward, slow, unsure, like I was touching something fragile. As my hand brushed against his, he paused. Just for a second. Our eyes met again. "You sure?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He nodded once. Been thinking about it longer than I want to admit. That threw me. Tyler? The same guy who used to talk about his ex like she was a goddess? The same guy who once spent an entire lunch break ranking which TikTok girls had the best gym routines? He must have seen the confusion on my face because he leaned in slightly, like he was trying to explain something without words. "I don't know what this is," he said quietly, "but it's not about labels right now, it's just you." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I just nodded, and that was enough for him. The moment stretched, warm and unspoken, as I stepped in closer. The closet was too small, and our shoulders bumped. Neither of us moved away. It was like something magnetic was holding us in place. And then the door rattled. A loud knock, sudden and sharp, like a gunshot in the silence. We both jumped. Tyler instantly backed up, one hand flying up to adjust his waistband, the other dragging his sleeve across his forehead. I stared at the door, my stomach flipping. "Tyler?" It was Gary, our shift manager. "You got that drill yet?" "Jordan, you back there too?" Tyler cleared his throat. "Yeah, just, checking inventory. Coming right out." We stared at each other, faces flushed, breathing uneven. Then Tyler leaned in and whispered, "Meet me in the break room. 15 minutes. Back table." I nodded before I could think, grabbed the damn drill, and pushed the door open like nothing had happened. We walked out, one after the other. Gary looked between us suspiciously but didn't say anything. Maybe we were lucky. Maybe he didn't notice anything. Or maybe he didn't want to. Back at my workstation, I tried to focus, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept dropping screws, misreading part numbers, pretending like I wasn't losing my mind thinking about what just happened. About Tyler. About what might happen next. Exactly 13 minutes later, I made my way toward the break room, my heart pounding with every step. He was already there, sitting in the far corner like he always did, hunched over his phone, looking casual and bored. But when I walked in, he glanced up, and that look in his eyes, that same heat from the supply closet, it was still there. I slid into the seat across from him. Neither of us said anything at first. "So," I finally murmured, trying to sound cool, "was that just a heat-of-the-moment thing?" Tyler leaned back in his chair, arms folded, gaze steady. "You want it to be?" I didn't answer. I just let the silence speak for me. And Tyler smiled. The break room felt too bright. Tyler sat across from me, one leg bouncing under the table, his arms folded like he was trying to hold something in. An impulse, maybe, or a secret he wasn't ready to speak out loud. I could feel the air crackling between us, that same buzz from the closet, now amplified by the quiet of the room. I hadn't answered his question yet. "You want it to be just a heat-of-the-moment thing?" The truth was, I didn't know. My thoughts were tangled in all the wrong places. All I knew was the way my pulse raced when he looked at me, the way his voice dropped when he got close, and the way his touch, intentional or not, still lingered in my memory like static on skin. "I don't think it was just a moment," I said finally, my voice quieter than I intended. Tyler didn't move for a second. Then his lips tugged into the faintest smile, not cocky this time, but something more real. "Yeah," he murmured, "me either." I glanced around the break room. Empty except for us, the hum of the vending machine our only company. I still didn't understand what had shifted between us, or why he was suddenly being so open after months of playful indifference. Tyler leaned in, elbows resting on the table. "Look," he said, voice low, "I don't know what's going on with me. I've never done anything with a guy. Ever. Not even thought about it. Until you." That hit harder than I expected. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, he added. It's like being around you flips a switch I didn't know I had. I looked at him, trying to see if he meant it. His face was open, uncertain but honest. The same guy who used to make crude jokes during lunch breaks was now staring at me like he wasn't sure whether to apologize or ask for something more. You don't have to explain it, I said. I don't want to be a one-time thing you regret. His brow furrowed. I don't regret it. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt heavier, like we were standing on the edge of something neither of us had planned for. Tyler broke it. Come over tonight, I blinked. To your place? Yeah, after shift. No roommates, no Gary knocking on the door, no closet walls, just you and me. My heart thumped. You sure? I asked. No, he admitted, smiling a little. But I want to be. That was enough. The rest of the shift dragged. Every time I passed Tyler in the warehouse, there was this unspoken thing between us. A shared glance, a half smile, a moment that felt like it could catch fire if we let it. He didn't touch me, not in front of anyone. But the tension, it was palpable. By the time the closing bell rang and I clocked out, my nerves were shot. I pulled into the parking lot beside his truck, engine still cooling. He was already waiting, arms crossed, leaning against the driver's side door. Follow me, he said with a grin. I'll leave the door unlocked. I tailed him across town, my fingers tapping the steering wheel the whole way. His apartment was tucked behind a row of quiet houses, second floor, with a balcony full of dying plants and a view of nothing in particular. I parked, got out, and took the stairs two at a time. The door was open, just a crack. I stepped inside. He was there in the kitchen, tossing his keys on the counter, already out of his work shirt, tank top clinging to his skin. He looked over, something unreadable in his eyes. You made it, he said. Yeah, I replied, voice low. We stood there, a few feet apart. Then he walked over, slow, deliberate. When he reached me, he didn't say a word. Just rested his hand on my shoulder. Gentle, but firm enough that I knew exactly what he wanted. No rush, no joke, just this. And when he leaned in, there was no hesitation. Tyler's lips hovered close to mine, not quite touching, like he was giving me a second to back out. I didn't. The kiss was tentative at first, like he wasn't sure what he was doing. A little messy, unpracticed, the kind of kiss that didn't come from confidence but from raw, confusing desire. But I felt it, his breath hitching, his hand tightening on my shoulder, the way he leaned in a little more like he needed it. He pulled back just enough to search my face, his eyes flicking between mine like he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I just nodded, barely, and that was all he needed. This time when he kissed me, it was deeper, slower, more sure. We moved without speaking, gravitating toward his worn-out couch like we both instinctively knew the pace this needed. He sat first, tugging me down beside him, close enough that our knees touched. I was hyper-aware of everything, how warm he felt next to me, how quiet the apartment was, how his hand settled on my thigh like it had always belonged there. This is insane, he muttered, more to himself than me. I don't even know what I'm doing right now, I chuckled under my breath. Same. But it didn't feel wrong, just new, charged. He turned toward me again, resting one arm on the back of the couch, his fingers lightly brushing the side of my neck. Is it weird that I'm nervous? Not weird, I said. Just honest. He let out a breath, then smiled. You're making it a lot easier to not freak out. Glad I could help, I said, nudging his knee with mine. It's kind of freaking me out too. He laughed, and for a second, the tension broke. It was still there, buzzing under the surface, but it shifted into something lighter. Something more like us. We talked for a while after that, about nothing and everything. How long he'd been feeling whatever this was, how confused he'd been, how he kept telling himself it would pass. But it hadn't. He admitted he didn't even know what to call it. Didn't know if he was bi, curious, just caught off guard. He only knew that whenever I was around, something in him shifted. "It's not just about tonight," he said quietly. "It's not some experiment or whatever. I trust you." That landed harder than I expected. Trust. That was something deeper, something more dangerous in its own way. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "You don't have to label this or explain it. Just be honest with me." "I am," he said, and for once there was no smirk, no bravado, just him. We stayed like that for a while, close, quiet, not rushing anything. His arm stayed around me, and I leaned into it like it was the most natural thing in the world. There was something kind of amazing about how simple it felt, considering how crazy the day had been. At some point, he asked if I wanted to stay over. No pressure. Just hang out, watch something, crash on the couch if I wanted. I said yes, so we changed into comfier clothes. He tossed me some old basketball shorts and a tee, and we settled in front of the TV, a half-hearted movie playing while we curled up under the same blanket. His hand found mine sometime during the second act, and neither of us let go. By the time the credits rolled, we were half asleep, bodies close, his head resting lightly against mine. "Still freaking out?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. "Nah," he murmured. "Just wondering how the hell I'm supposed to act normal around you at work tomorrow." I laughed, softly. "You won't. Neither will I." His hand squeezed mine. "Good." I woke up to the sound of soft breathing and the weight of an arm draped over my chest. For a few seconds, I didn't move, didn't open my eyes. I just laid there, feeling the warmth of Tyler's body against mine, the faint rise and fall of his chest in sync with mine, and that strange sense of calm that came with realizing something real had happened. This wasn't a dream. He was still here. I hadn't imagined it. His couch was a little too narrow for two grown guys, and yet, somehow, we'd ended up tangled like this by morning. My back was stiff. My neck was slightly cranked. But I didn't care. I could have stayed like that forever. Then I felt him stir. His arm tightened slightly, then loosened as he blinked himself awake. "Morning," he said, his voice rough and unfiltered, the way voices get when sleep hasn't quite left yet. "Hey," I whispered back, turning slightly to face him. We both lay there in that fragile quiet, the kind that usually follows a night where something changes. I half expected him to pull away, to sit up and brush it off, to crack a joke and act like the whole thing was a fluke. But he didn't. "You good?" he asked, brushing sleep from his eyes with the back of his hand. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. He exhaled slowly and nodded, like he'd been holding that breath since last night. "I was afraid I'd wake up and you'd be gone." "Wasn't going anywhere," I replied. He smiled. Just a small one. But it was the kind of smile that sticks with you. Eventually, we untangled and shuffled into the kitchen. He made coffee while I sat at the counter in his oversized hoodie and a pair of socks that weren't mine. Neither of us said much, but it wasn't an awkward silence. It was quiet in the way people are when they're still figuring things out, but there's no panic in it. He passed me a mug, his fingers brushing mine, and gave me a look like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. "I meant what I said last night," he mumbled finally. "This wasn't some one-time thing." I nodded, heart beating just a bit faster. "I know. But I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Like, am I supposed to text you later? Ask you out? Go back to pretending I don't stare at you across the warehouse?" I laughed into my coffee. "Maybe don't do that last one." He smirked. "Cool. So, text you later then?" "Yeah," I said. "Text me." The shift back at work that afternoon was surreal. Nothing major happened, but everything felt different. Every time our eyes met across the floor, it was like a secret. Tyler wasn't touchy or obvious. He was careful, deliberate. But I caught the way he lingered a little longer when he passed by. The way his voice softened when he asked if I wanted to grab food after. We didn't talk about labels or what this meant long term. It wasn't about that yet. That night, we ended up back at his place again. We sat on the balcony, sipping cheap beer, trading stories we hadn't told each other before. He talked about high school, about the pressure to always be the confident one, the straight jock, the guy who always knew what he was doing, even when he didn't. I used to think about stuff like this, he said, gesturing between us. But I always pushed it down, thought it was easier to just be who people expected. And now, he looked at me, the city lights casting soft shadows on his face. Now I want to find out who I actually am. It wasn't a perfect confession. It wasn't some grand, romantic speech. But it felt real. Like the kind of thing someone says when they're finally letting themselves want something. Want someone. He reached over and slid his fingers through mine again. And just like that, I knew I was already in deeper than I planned to be. Things didn't magically get easier after that night. There were awkward moments, hesitations, long stretches of silence where Tyler would stare at his phone like he wanted to say something but couldn't. And I didn't push him. I knew what it was like to sit in that space between who people think you are and who you're still trying to understand yourself to be. But despite that, he kept showing up. A text after work. A knock on my door on his days off. An invitation to hang out that turned into him cooking me spaghetti badly, then getting defensive when I said the noodles were basically paste. That kind of stuff. Little things that, together, started to feel like something real. We didn't tell anyone at work. Not because we were ashamed, but because it was ours. Something we were still building, piece by piece, like the shelves we stocked every day at the warehouse. Quietly. Carefully. Out of sight, but solid. One night about 3 weeks later, we were sitting on my couch, legs tangled under a blanket, watching something neither of us were really paying attention to. Tyler had his head resting on my shoulder, his fingers absently tracing the back of my hand. "You ever think about where this is going?" he asked suddenly, voice low. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't have thoughts, but because I didn't want to scare him with them. "Sometimes," I said, "but I'm okay just being here right now." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, same." He was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, like he wasn't sure if I'd hear him, "I don't think I've ever felt this comfortable with someone before." I looked at him, the way his eyes stayed on the TV even though they were unfocused. "That's not nothing," I said. He turned toward me then. Fully. His face inches from mine. "I like you, Jordan. I don't know how else to say it. But I do." My chest tightened, in a good way. "I like you too," I said. The kiss that followed was slow, familiar now. It didn't carry the shock of that first wild moment in the supply closet. But it didn't need to. This was different. This was steady. After, we sat in silence for a while, our bodies warm under the blanket, hearts beating in time. And I realized something. Sometimes the most unexpected things don't come crashing, in like a movie scene. Sometimes they start with a weird, impulsive moment in a closet, and turn into quiet nights on a couch, into knowing someone without needing to ask all the questions, into being held just because they want to. That moment in the closet, it changed everything. But what we built after, that's what stayed.